This story begins with the words of Octavio Paz: "Solitude is the profoundest fact of the human condition." In a quiet Mexican village where bougainvillea climbs ancient walls and the jungle whispers secrets to the moon, a young painter named Lucia will learn that solitude can be both a prison and a key, a wound in its own healing. This is her journey from silence to song. Scene 1: The painter Who stopped speaking. In the village of San Miguel de las Flores, where houses bloomed in shades of terracotta, turquoise, and sunset gold, there lived a painter who no longer spoke. Her name was Lucia, and she was 23 years old when silence became her language. 3 years ago, a fever had taken her parents and younger brother within a single week, leaving her alone in a house that remembered laughter. Now she painted instead of speaking, her canvases filled with images that made the villagers turn away: empty chairs, closed doors, gardens without people. Her studio was the old bedroom upstairs, where light fell through wooden shutters and golden bars. Brush stroke, the only sound in the house. The villagers called her La Solitaria, the solitary one, and though they meant no cruelty, the name settled on her shoulders like ash. She bought her supplies at the market but never lingered to chat. She attended mass but sat in the back corner where shadows gathered. She existed in the spaces between community, a ghost among the living. Flutter. Sometimes birds landed on her windowsill, but she never looked up. Solitude had become her skin, and she wore it like armor against a world that felt too bright, too loud, too impossibly alive. Scene 2: The night the Quetzal came. It was the first night of November when everything changed, the night when the veil between worlds grows thin and the dead return to visit. Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead. The village square glowed with marigolds and candlelight, alive with music and memory. But Lucia sat alone in her studio, painting by lamplight, trying not to hear the celebration below. She had set no altar for her family. The pain was still too raw, too present. Tap, tap, tap. Something knocked at her window. Lucia ignored it, her brush moving across canvas in shades of indigo and black. Tap, tap, tap. More insistent now. She looked up and gasped. On her windowsill perched a bird unlike any she had seen. Its feathers shimmered in emerald and crimson, its tail streaming behind it like liquid light. A Quetzal, sacred bird of the Maya, symbol of freedom and the gods themselves. But Quetzals did not live this far north, and they did not knock on windows like neighbors requesting sugar. The bird tilted its head and spoke in a voice like wind through temple ruins. "Why do you hide from the living, little painter?" Lucia's brush clattered to the floor. Scene 3: The bird's question. For a long moment, Lucia could only stare. The Quetzal ruffled its magnificent feathers and hopped closer to the glass. "I know you can hear me," it said patiently. "The question remains, why do you choose solitude over life?" Lucia found her voice, rusty from disuse. What are you?" "I am memory," the Quetzal replied. "I am the stories your grandmother told you. I am the songs your mother sang. I am everything you've locked away in silence." Tears sprang to Lucia's eyes. "Then you are pain, and I want nothing to do with you." The bird's eyes, impossibly ancient, impossibly kind, studied her. "Solitude, little one, is not the same as peace." Octavio Paz knew this. He wrote that solitude is the profoundest fact of human existence, but he did not say we must drown in it. "I'm not drowning," Lucia whispered. "I'm surviving." "Are you?" The Quetzal's tail swept in a graceful arc. "Or are you simply waiting to join the dead?" The words struck like arrows. Lucia turned away, her hands trembling. Thrum, thrum. Her heart beat like a frightened drum. "Come to the jungle tomorrow at dawn," the Quetzal said softly. "Follow the path of blue stones. There is something you must see before you can truly choose solitude or connection, silence or song." Flutter. The bird vanished into the night, leaving only a single iridescent feather on the windowsill. Scene 4: The path of blue stones. Lucia did not sleep that night. She lay in bed listening to the distant music of the village celebration, the Quetzal's feather clutched in her hand. Follow the path of blue stones. As dawn painted the sky in shades of rose and pearl, Lucia found herself walking toward the jungle's edge. She wore her mother's rebozo shawl for courage, its threads still holding the scent of marigolds and cinnamon. The jungle began where the village ended, a wall of green that breathed with invisible life. And there, leading into the shadows, was a path marked with smooth blue stones that seemed to glow with their own light. Crunch, crunch, her sandals on the trail. Whisper, whisper, the leaves overhead. Splash. Somewhere, water over rocks. The path wound deeper, and Lucia felt her chest tighten with each step. This was foolishness. This was madness. She should turn back. But something pulled her forward, curiosity, or perhaps something deeper. The need to understand why solitude had become her only companion. Scene 5: The Garden of Ruins. The path ended in a clearing Lucia had never seen, though she'd lived her entire life near this jungle. Ancient Mayan ruins rose from the earth, a small temple half claimed by vines, its stones carved with glyphs that time had softened but not erased. In the center of the clearing grew a garden unlike any other. Flowers bloomed in impossible colors, flowers that seemed to pulse with light, that swayed though there was no wind. The Quetzal perched on a crumbling stone lintel, waiting. "Welcome," it said, "to the Garden of Solitude." Lucia stepped forward slowly, her artist's eye drinking in the beauty despite her fear. "This place," the Quetzal continued, "has existed since the first human felt alone. Every person who has ever lived has walked through this garden, whether they knew it or not." "I don't understand," Lucia whispered. "You will." The bird took flight, circling the clearing. "Look at the flowers. Tell me what you see." Lucia approached the nearest bloom, a magnificent flower with petals the color of sunset. As she looked closer, she saw something impossible. Within the petals were images, memories, entire lives. She saw a young man grieving his lost love, an old woman whose children had moved away, a child who could not make friends. Each flower held a story of solitude. Scene 6: The Flower That Dreamed. "These are," Lucia breathed, "the solitudes of every soul that ever lived," the Quetzal finished. "Some brief, some lifelong. Some chosen, some forced upon them." Lucia moved through the garden, seeing story after story bloom in the petals. She saw warriors after battle, their companions lost. She saw artists in garrets, creating beauty in isolation. She saw mothers who outlived their children, grandparents forgotten in silent rooms. Then she came to a flower that made her knees weak, a bloom in shades of amber and turquoise. In its petals, she saw herself. She saw her parents' funeral, the endless days that followed, the slow retreat from life. But she also saw something else: her paintings, each one a cry for connection disguised as acceptance of solitude. "This is me," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes," the Quetzal landed beside the flower. "And do you see? Your solitude is not unique, yet it is entirely your own." This is the paradox. Pause. Understood. A voice, warm, familiar, impossible, spoke from behind her. "Mija, you were never truly alone." Lucia turned and cried out. Standing in the garden, translucent as morning mist, was her grandmother, Abuela Maria. Scene 7: Abuela's Wisdom. "Abuela?" Lucia's voice cracked. "How?" The old woman smiled, her form shimmering like heat waves over stone. "On this day, when the veil is thin, we can visit those who need us most." Lucia wanted to run to her, to embrace her, but something held her back: the knowledge that this was memory, not flesh. "You died when I was 12, Lucia said. "Before Mama and Papa. Before Raphael." "I know, Mija. And I have watched you from the other side. I have seen you build walls around your heart." "They left me," Lucia said, her voice raw. "Everyone leaves." Abuela Maria moved closer, and though she could not touch Lucia, her presence felt like warmth. "Death takes the body, not the love. Your parents, your brother, they live in every brush stroke you make, every color you choose." "But I'm so alone," Lucia sobbed. "No," Abuela said firmly. "You are in solitude. These are different things. Solitude is not the absence of others, Mija. It is the presence of yourself. And once you learn to be with yourself, truly with yourself, you can be with others again." The Quetzal called from above. Solitude is the profoundest fact of human condition, but it is also the gateway. Through it, we find ourselves. And finding ourselves, we can finally find each other. Whisper. The wind carried Abuela's words. "Paint what you see here, Mija." Paint the truth of solitude. It is not your enemy. Lucia closed her eyes, and when she opened them, Abuela was gone. Scene 8. The musician's song. When Lucia returned to the village, the sun was high and the streets were busy with daily life. But everything looked different now, as if she were seeing with new eyes. She noticed things she had ignored for 3 years, the way the market woman saved the ripest mangoes for elderly customers. The children playing soccer in the plaza, the teenage couple holding hands by the fountain. Strum, strum. Guitar music floated from a doorway. Without thinking, Lucia followed the sound. She found herself at the entrance of Don Diego's shop, an elderly man who sold instruments and gave lessons to children. He was playing a weathered guitar, his fingers moving across strings like water. When he saw Lucia, he stopped, surprise crossing his weathered face. La Solitaria, he said gently. I never thought I'd see you darken my doorway. Lucia struggled for words. I heard you playing. Music has a way of calling us, Don Diego said. Even those who think they want silence. He gestured to a chair, and Lucia, surprising herself, sat. Did you know, Diego said, resuming his playing, that I once met Octavio Paz? Many years ago, when I was young and played in the city. Lucia's eyes widened. Scene 9. Diego's memory. Don Diego's fingers continued their dance across the strings as he spoke. He came to a cafe where I was playing. Afterward, he spoke with me about music and poetry, about loneliness and belonging. Strum, strum, strum. The melody wove between his words. He told me something I have never forgotten. We are born alone, we die alone. But in between, we have the miraculous opportunity to share our solitude with others. Share our solitude? Lucia repeated. Yes. Not hide it, not overcome it, but share it. Your loneliness, mija, is not something to be ashamed of. It is part of being human. Diego set down his guitar and looked at Lucia with eyes that had seen much sorrow and much joy. I lost my wife 10 years ago. My children live far away. I know solitude intimately. But listen. He picked up the guitar again and played a melody so beautiful it made Lucia's throat tight. This song was born from my loneliness. But now it belongs to everyone who hears it. This is how we transform solitude into connection. Lucia felt something shift in her chest, like a door opening after years locked. I paint, she said quietly. I've been painting my solitude, but I thought it was just emptiness. Show me, Diego said simply. Scene 10. The paintings speak. Lucia led Don Diego to her studio, her heart hammering. No one had been in this room for 3 years except her. She opened the door, and Diego stepped inside, his eyes moving slowly across the canvases that lined every wall. Empty chairs, closed doors, gardens without people, rooms filled with absence, silence. Diego said nothing for a long moment. Lucia felt panic rise. They're terrible, aren't they? They are extraordinary, Diego interrupted softly. He moved closer to one painting, a kitchen table set for 4, with 3 chairs empty. This, he said, his voice thick, is not emptiness. This is love that has nowhere to go. This is memory made visible. This is solitude that longs for connection. Lucia felt tears slide down her cheeks. Every person in our village has felt this, Diego continued, gesturing to the paintings. Every person has known loss, absence, the ache of chairs that will never be filled again. He turned to face her. You have been painting our shared human condition, mija. You have been speaking for all of us. But no one sees them, Lucia whispered. Because you haven't shown them. You've kept your solitude locked away, when it could be a bridge. Thrum, thrum, Lucia's heart beating like possibility. What if? She began, then stopped, afraid. What if? Diego encouraged. What if I painted something different? Something that showed solitude not as emptiness, but as a garden where we all meet. Diego smiled. Then you would be painting the truth. Scene 11. The River Child. That night, rain came to the village, soft at first, then stronger, drumming on roofs and running through cobblestone streets. Patter, patter, splash. Lucia stood at her window, watching water cascade from the eaves, and remembered something Abuela used to say. Rain is the sky's tears, mija. And tears are how the earth grows green. As she watched, she saw something impossible in the rain-slicked street below. A child made of water and moonlight, dancing in the downpour. The river child, a spirit from old Mayan stories, born from sorrow and rain, who appeared to those transitioning between grief and healing. The child looked up at Lucia's window and beckoned. Without thinking, Lucia grabbed her mother's rebozo and ran downstairs, out into the rain. Splash, splash, splash. Her feet in puddles. The river child laughed, a sound like water over stones, and took Lucia's hand. Its touch was cool and flowing, neither solid nor liquid but something between. "Come," it said, "I will show you what your tears have made." They ran through the rain-soaked streets, past closed shops and sleeping houses, to the edge of the village where the land sloped down to a stream. The stream, swollen with rain, rushed and sang. And in its waters, Lucia saw faces. Scene 12: The Waters of Memory. The faces in the water were not reflections, they were memories, moments, fragments of lives. Lucia saw her mother teaching her to mix paints when she was 6 years old. Her father reading poetry by lamplight, his voice soft and musical. Her brother Raphael laughing, always laughing, at jokes only children understand. But she also saw others: Don Diego playing guitar for his wife on their anniversary. The market woman singing lullabies to her grandchildren. Even the quiet man who swept the church, all their loves, all their losses. Water remembers everything, the river child said. It carries all our tears, all our joy. It connects every living thing. Lucia knelt beside the stream, and her own tears fell into the rushing water. "I thought if I didn't feel, I wouldn't hurt," she whispered. "But you cannot choose to feel only joy," the river child replied. "The heart does not work that way. Solitude taught you to feel deeply, now you must choose what to do with that depth." "Paint it," Lucia said, the realization blooming like a flower. "Share it." The river child smiled and began to dissolve back into the rain. The garden of solitude is also the garden of connection. You have learned to be alone. Now learn to be alone together. Splash. The child became water, became rain, became part of the endless cycle. Lucia stood in the downpour, her face turned to the sky, and laughed for the first time in 3 years. Scene 13: The mural begins. The next morning, Lucia stood before the largest wall in the village square, the side of the old market building, blank and waiting. She had approached the village council with a proposal: let her paint a mural, a gift to the community. They had been so surprised to hear her speak that they agreed without question. Now she faced the wall with buckets of paint, brushes of every size, and a heart full of nervous hope. Flutter. The quetzal appeared on the market roof, watching. "What will you paint?" it asked. "The truth," Lucia replied. "Our solitude, our connection, the garden where we all meet." She dipped her brush and made the first stroke, a line of turquoise across white plaster. Brush stroke, the rhythm that had always been her language. But this time, she was not painting to hide. She was painting to reveal. By noon, a crowd had gathered. Children sat on the cobblestones, watching colors bloom. Elders brought her water and worried she would tire. Don Diego played guitar nearby, his music weaving with her visual creation. The market woman set up her stall close by, offering encouragement: "Make my vegetables beautiful, mija." And Lucia smiled. She spoke. She belonged. Scene 14: The garden takes shape. For 7 days, Lucia painted. The mural grew across the wall like a living thing, telling a story in colors and forms that made the villagers stop and stare. She painted the garden of solitude as she had seen it, flowers blooming in impossible hues, each petal holding a story. But she also painted the village itself, the houses in their terracotta and turquoise glory. The jungle pressing close with its secrets, the mountains holding the sky. And in the garden, she painted people. Not portraits exactly, but essences, the feeling of the market woman's generosity. The sound of Don Diego's guitar made visual, the laughter of children playing soccer. She painted empty chairs, but also hands reaching across tables. Closed doors, but also windows filled with light. Solitude, but also connection. The villagers began to recognize themselves in the work, not their faces, but their hearts. "There," one woman said, pointing. That's how I felt when my husband died. But look, there are others around it, holding it up. That's me learning guitar, a boy said excitedly. The notes that don't know where to go yet. The mural became a mirror and a map, showing them both their isolation and their unity. And at the center of it all, Lucia painted a single quetzal with streaming tail feathers, its wings spread wide enough to shelter everyone. Scene 15. The dedication. On the 8th day, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of amber and gold, the entire village gathered for the mural's dedication. Lucia stood before her work, her mother's rebozo around her shoulders, Don Diego beside her with his guitar. The priest blessed the wall. The mayor gave a speech. Children threw flower petals, but it was Don Diego who asked Lucia to speak. She had not planned to. The painting was supposed to speak for itself. But when she looked at the faces gathered, her people, her village, her community that had waited patiently for her to return, the words came. 3 years ago, I lost my family, she began, her voice stronger than she expected. And I thought I had lost myself as well. I retreated into solitude, believing it was safety. The crowd was completely still, even the children quiet. But solitude is not safety. It is not punishment. It is not even really separation. She turned to the mural, to the garden of stories blooming across the wall. Octavio Paz wrote that solitude is the profoundest fact of human condition. And he was right. Each of us is alone in our own skin, our own mind, our own experience. But he also understood that this solitude is what makes us human. And what makes us capable of connection. Lucia's eyes found the market woman, then the church sweeper, then the teenage couple, then all the faces she had learned to see again. Scene 16. The speech continues. When I was alone in my studio, painting empty chairs and closed doors, I thought I was painting isolation. But I was actually painting longing, the desire to be known, to be seen, to matter to someone. Strum. Don Diego played a soft chord. Every person here has known solitude, has felt the ache of absence, the weight of silence, the fear of being forgotten. Heads nodded. A few people wiped their eyes. But look at this mural. Look at how the stories connect, how the flowers grow together, how the solitudes create a garden. Lucia's voice grew passionate, the artist speaking through her. We are alone, yes. But we are alone together. Our solitudes touch, overlap, create something beautiful when we stop hiding them. She touched the painted quetzal at the mural's heart. This bird is freedom. It is memory. It is the voice that asks us to share our deepest truths, not hide them in silence. For 3 years, I hid. And you let me. You called me La Solitaria, but you never stopped including me in your prayers, your thoughts, your concern. Now I understand solitude is not exile. It is a room we all visit. And the door opens from the inside. The market woman called out, "Welcome home, mija." Others joined, "Welcome home. Welcome home." And Lucia, the painter who had stopped speaking, found herself embraced by dozens of arms, held by her village, crying tears that were both grief and joy. The river child's words echoed, "Learn to be alone together." Scene 17. The garden blooms. In the weeks that followed, something remarkable happened. The mural became a gathering place, a point of connection. People brought their own solitudes to it, writing notes, leaving flowers, adding small touches with Lucia's permission. A woman whose son had moved to America painted a tiny airplane in one corner. A man recovering from illness added a butterfly emerging from a cocoon. Slowly, the mural evolved from Lucia's vision into the village's shared story. And Lucia herself transformed. She still painted in her studio, but now the door was open. Children came to watch, asking questions she answered with patience and delight. Don Diego came to play guitar while she worked, their arts intertwining. The market woman brought her lunch, staying to chat about everything and nothing. Lucia learned that solitude and connection were not opposites but partners in a dance. She needed her hours alone to create, to reflect, to process the depth of human experience. But she also needed the village to remind her why creation mattered, why stories must be shared, why beauty is meant to be witnessed. Brush stroke, strum, laughter, silence, rhythm, the dance of a life fully lived. Scene 18. The full circle. 1 year after the Quetzal first appeared at her window, Lucia returned to the Garden of Solitude. She walked the path of blue stones at dawn, her heart full but not heavy. The ruins were exactly as before, timeless and patient. The flowers of solitude still bloomed in their impossible colors. But now Lucia saw them differently, not as prisons of isolation, but as proof of our shared humanity. The Quetzal landed on her shoulder, its weight barely noticeable. "You have learned the lesson," it said. "Yes," Lucia replied. "Solitude is not something to escape or overcome. It is something to understand, to accept, to transform." "And what will you paint next?" the bird asked. Lucia smiled, thinking of the commission the neighboring village had requested, of the students who wanted to learn from her, of the book of paintings someone wanted to publish. "I will paint what I see, the human heart in all its complexity. The solitude that makes us individuals. The connection that makes us whole." "And you are no longer afraid?" "I am always afraid," Lucia said honestly. "But I paint anyway. I speak anyway. I connect anyway. Because that is courage, not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it." The Quetzal's feathers shimmered with approval. Octavio Paz would be proud. "You understand his words not just with your mind, but with your life." Flutter. The bird rose into the air, circling the garden once, twice. "Will I see you again?" Lucia called. "Every time you paint truth," the bird called back. "Every time you share your solitude. Every time you choose connection over hiding. I am there." Epilogue: The Garden of the Heart. Lucia returned to the village as the sun climbed higher, painting the world in light. The mural in the square had become famous. People came from other towns to see it, to photograph it, to stand before it in silence or tears. But for Lucia, it was simply home. A mirror that showed her village back to itself, beautiful and broken and whole. She stopped at Don Diego's shop, where he was teaching a young girl to play guitar. She visited the market woman, who pressed a mango into her hands with a smile. She stopped by the church, where the quiet sweeper nodded at her with respect and recognition. She belonged, not because she was no longer alone, but because she had learned to carry her solitude with grace. That evening, she stood at her studio window, the same window where the Quetzal had first appeared. She held a brush in one hand, a letter from a distant gallery in the other. Her paintings would travel, her story would be told. Her solitude would be shared with thousands she would never meet. But she would also stay here, in this village, in this house of memories. Painting and speaking and being part of the beautiful, difficult dance of human connection. Brush stroke, breath, heartbeat. Solitude is the profoundest fact of the human condition. But it is not the end of the story. It is the beginning. Closing, the wisdom remains. As night fell over San Miguel de las Flores. As the mural glowed under streetlights and families gathered for dinner. As the jungle whispered its eternal secrets, one truth remained. We are all walking through the garden of solitude. Each of us alone in our experience, our pain, our joy, our confusion. But we do not walk it alone. Our solitudes touch, connect, create patterns more beautiful than any one of us could design. And when we have the courage to paint our truth, to sing our loneliness, to speak our silence, we discover something miraculous. The garden of solitude is also the garden of love. The room of isolation is also the room of self-knowledge. And self-knowledge leads us, always, back to each other. Lucia understood this now, as she painted by lamplight, as the village lived and breathed around her, as her solitude became not a wall but a window. We are born alone. We die alone. But in between, we share this extraordinary journey, this dance of solitude and connection, of painting and witnessing, of silence and song. Flutter. Somewhere, a Quetzal called. Strum. Somewhere, a guitar played. Splash. Somewhere, rain fell and was remembered. And everywhere, in every heart that dared to be both alone and connected, the garden bloomed eternal. Closing message. YouTube outro. 30 seconds. As morning light spilled across her mural, Lucia smiled. Her paintings no longer spoke only of loneliness, but of the brave human heart that chooses connection despite the fear. Thank you for listening to The Garden of Solitude, inspired by the profound wisdom of Mexican poet Octavio Paz. Remember, your solitude is not a flaw to fix, but a truth to understand. And when you share that truth, you build bridges none of us can cross alone. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more tales of wisdom, wonder, and what it means to be beautifully, bravely human. Leave a comment sharing your own experience with solitude and connection. Until next time, may you walk your garden with courage, and may you never forget that even in your deepest solitude, you are part of something larger. We are alone together, and that is everything.